I stand in front of any breathtaking scenery and complete the picture. Lyrics made infamous by Liverpool-based rapman and general scallywag Lee Scott on the legendary 2019 highly anticipated crossover album with himself and Jan Baxter, lifted from the track Who's Your Mate? Why am I giving anecdotal information about a niche UK hip hop song? Well, I don't know, but the point still stands. The lyric in question refers greatly to today's topic. We are discussing, with hands full of wrath and heads full of hate, Vanity on Masse. And I do believe that lyric fits the descriptor. Every single time I'm faced with this plague, that lyric runs through my mind that these people genuinely believe that. Now, I understand Mr. Scott's use of the phrase to be somewhat sarcastic, or perhaps it's an egotistical slice of braggadocio, as is accustomed in hip hop and rap circles. It's less becoming when it's the average Joe and they sing this lyric by taking 7 selfies.
Well, life imitates art.
So it does.
It's a scourge, really, Vanity. Evil, it's an ill. And I think that lyric, as you said, I think it could potentially be taken sort of sarcastically. Does he really think that he completes the picture? Maybe not, but I think a lot of people do. A lot of people genuinely do, and as you say, it's far less becoming when it's just Becky from down the street, or your mate's uncle, or something like that. Does that complete the picture? No, no, it's a sickening image. It's like what society is becoming like? They're becoming like the picture of Dorian Gray. It's like somewhere in an attic there's a anthropomorphized image of society that's just getting uglier and uglier with every passing day, until eventually someone's got to take the knife and plunge it through the heart of that photo to sort of, I guess, reset our values and what's important in society.
So that's really good going. We're 3 minutes in and we're talking already about apocalypse and bringing about the doomsday. I think, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be quick to agree with me here that we have put in some serious work since the last episode, and we're faster than the speed of death now. So there's a lot of plaudits that you can give us for that. But standing in front of the breathtaking scenery and completing the picture is indeed a bit of an ill that plagues society at large. And the thing is that the most obvious examples that you do find of this exist largely in the areas where you think you're getting out of the worst of society. These experiences that are witnessed at sort of sacred ground, really. There's a few examples that I have where the experiences have been eerily similar, and there is this common trait running through them all, and that is the ruin running through them all. One of these experiences, myself and T-Dog sat virtually opposite me today, experienced together. I don't know if that's a good place for us to start, Tom. We'll just dive right into that.
No, it's a good place because you just sort of regurgitated a suppressed memory. one that I didn't really care to think about again, but that's the point of Jeremiad, isn't it? It's not supposed to be comfortable. We're holding a mirror up to society and to ourselves. So let's face it. Let's face the music. Go on, please tell the dear listeners about our frankly horrific experience that I don't think any person should really have to go through.
And luckily for the listeners, we are basically therapists at this point. My counselling rates are available on the website. Tom's is too. But we can't do a double session, just to put that out there now. So there we were in lowly June, when the sun swung low and stayed often, and how distant that feels now. Soaking up the pagan vibes and getting all good spiritual juju at the circle formation known as Stonehenge. There for the summer solstice. What more magical, ethereal events could one hope for in the British calendar of summertime? And we noticed one distinctly sickly thing, and that was the most cherished moment of the solstice for a lot of people, the Hollywood moment, if you like, occurs in the morning around sunrise. Too early for two city slickers like us. And without a doubt, there was far more people there for the sunrise than there had been throughout the night. Now, that's one thing. You think, okay, the sunrise is quite a sight. I can understand people wanting to get down for it. As the scene unfolded, from the second that you saw the first sneak peek of this sun preparing to prop its head above the tree line and greet a new day and bask it in its rays, but pretty much every person there was stood ready, aiming. They'd got their device locked and loaded. They were targeting that sun, but they weren't just looking to take pictures of it. They were looking to take that. Some of them, remember those two girls right in front of us that were conducting a whole photo shoot, doing selfies of each other, taking pictures of one another, then swapping, do the exact same poses, and the whole thing just became subtext for sprouting your social value, for inflating the ego, a self-esteem maraud, really, at cost of this truly pure and incredible event that often, as is happening right now with me, leaves you sort of speechless and should fill you with nothing but positivity, leave you a lot to reflect upon. And yet these people, all they want to do is grab a little selfie with themselves. And by the way, you think about the logistics of actually getting a selfie with the first rise of sun of the day. I mean, you can't look at that sun directly. It's that bright. It literally pulverizes your eyes. Is So to try and get a selfie with it in the background is just questionable at best. I know you enjoyed it a lot, though, didn't you, Tom?
I did, yeah. I mean, like, I always love going to Stonehenge. It's a magical place. Um, and that was a particularly good sunrise. I don't know, you remember all the sort of mist on the Wiltshire hills,
Yeah.
and the skies were clear. It was really beautiful. And I remember those two girls. It was almost fascinating to watch. I almost kind of felt like some kind of like nature documentary producer, and I was just observing. I was analyzing. I was looking at this behavior. And I was thinking, right, what's the cognitive process here behind all of this? Because they were taking pictures, doing the, and they, do you remember they were just half the pictures were just of like the back of their heads, of them like
Oh,
looking at the sunrise.
no, that
That
was
that,
infuriating.
that's one of the worst forms of kind of traveler holiday photograph, is the kind of back of the head looking at the view. I think it's horrific. It's just a horrible photo. I think I want, okay, nice view. Why the fuck do I want to look at the back of someone's head? And it's like, it's again, yeah, it's sort of bragging in a way, isn't it? It's like, this is the view I have, and here's the proof of it as well. But yeah, and I just sort of looked at these two girls and I thought, okay, it's fine to take a couple of pictures. Like, I have nothing wrong with that. But it was just like a good. I'd say it went on for about 10 minutes at least.
I started to suspect if they were agents of English heritage and they'd been employed.
I'm not sure. They were. I'm pretty sure they were German. Maybe they just maybe they just come over to visit the UK. I don't know. Uh, Another particularly egregious thing was that. Do you remember that absolutely massive selfie stick?
Yes.
I've never seen it. It wasn't a stick. It was like a pole. It was a selfie pole that they have now. I think it's because obviously they don't allow drones,
Yeah.
which damn right, because I bloody hate drones. But I think you get that. It must have been. It was literally the size of like a pole vault, but obviously with like a camera on the end, and it was just a distraction for me. I was like, I remember when we went into the stones, and I was just looking at this huge stick. I mean, first and foremost, I was thinking like, the kind of the gall to walk around with such like, I'd feel so embarrassed to walk around with like this massive selfie pole. But these people just have no shame, do they? And it's like, why, just you recording this, there's people live streaming it. It's like, just enjoy the moment, just soak it in. Yes, take the odd picture here as a little keepsake. I think in total I took like 4 or 5 pictures. I know you took a few on your film camera.
Hmm.
But again,
Yeah,
that was
the
minimal.
selfies that I got were incredible.
um, and the evening was really nice. I remember the moon was really magical as well that night. It did have a proper mystical kind of quality to the whole event. But yeah, it was definitely more people than usual. It kind of tarnished it a bit. It does leave a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth. Just cameras everywhere, a sea of them.
It's a pillaging of purity. I think the influx tramples over the transcendence that that event can offer up. It's supposed to be a special thing. Those stones, they're mythical,
Mm.
and of course everyone can enjoy them their own way. But just this untapped vanity running around the place, strangling the breath of folks who wish to gain replenished. It just felt slightly off, didn't it? It did leave you, as you say, with a bit of a bitter taste, which obviously isn't necessarily unaccustomed for gentlemen such as ourselves.
A significant religious site as well. It just does feel quite out of place. Not necessarily disrespectful, but just sort of, I guess, against the spirit of somewhere like that. I mean, those stones are thousands of years old. I almost feel like you should try and sort of transport yourself back to that time when you're somewhere like that and just kind of absorb the stones, absorb the place. But instead, all these people really care about is getting their picture with them and posting on Instagram, getting a few likes and a few comments, and then feeling better about themselves and sort of boasting. Really, that's what it comes down to a lot of the time. It's kind of is that old adage, like if you go to Angkor Wat and you don't get a photo at Angkor Wat, then did you go to Angkor Wat?
Selfies have become too great a currency in in today's day and age, and I think
I,
that's the biggest shame about it. Despite how infuriating it can be to witness and experience this, the shame of it is, someone's gone to the effort of going to this event. So they've paid money to get there. They've made plans to do so. They've committed time, effort, maybe gone with someone else, and they get there and completely miss the point of the event. They could walk away with a new lease of life. They could, derive all this fulfillment, this fake fulfillment that they're spouting in a genuine way through engaging with the event, through I don't know, a wonderful conversation they have with a drugged up hippie, or they could hug the stone and feel renewed warmth. Yet all they care about is snapping the angles.
I know. I mean, if people just sat around and listened, they might have been able to eavesdrop in on a certain conversation of a man who claimed to be the father of Natasha and Daniel Bedingfield. whilst you were
No.
away, he was aching to just tell someone that. I could tell, like he just uninvited went up to this couple, started talking to them, and then completely unprompted and just not natural to the flow of the conversation was like, oh, by the way, you might know my daughter, my son, that they have a top UK 10 hit singles. You might have you heard of Natasha and Daniel Bedingfield? That's my kids. It's like no one fucking asked me.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting to listen to, and because I was there and I was just absorbing the atmosphere. This might have been when I was feeling a bit unwell, so I actually couldn't do much else but kind of lie there and wait for it to pass. We did have a bit of fun in the medical tent.
I think what that was the collective pressure of all of this vanity surrounding us, and us being two extremely modest and unmoving chaps. Sometimes it's hard to deal with that negative energy coming your way, and it can usurp and undermine one. But yeah, it was just a shame to see. It was a shame to see. But you know, as I mean, I wish in some ways Stonehenge was an isolated victim, but it sorely is not.
It
There's
is
been
not.
multiple incidents, just that personally I've experienced over the past, even just over the past year, really, that I would say these all fit into, where there's similar monstrosities running wild. So probably the most famous mountain region in Wales being that of Snowdonia, and obviously the mountain itself, Snowdon. has become a very attractive proposition. It has migrated very well to the digital sphere, and there's a lot of interest around it, I suppose, with travel vloggers and people posting idyllic pictures on their grams of how wonderful Snowdon looks. And you can encourage a whole new demographic of folk to be interested in hiking a mountain that normally would never want to leave the sofa. And that's not so necessarily such a bad thing. But what is a bad thing is the reality that awaits you at the top of Snowdon. Now, I wouldn't particularly say that it's necessarily a hard climb. I think there's many routes that you can take up there, but I think the point is to enjoy the journey, is to literally view the progress as you're going up and get all these wonderful different viewpoints and soak up the fresh air that is just abounding. Say hi to the convivial folk that greet you as you saunter past them, and you get to the top. And not only do you find that there is a cafe at the top, yes, a cafe at the top of the mountain to service what has become quite a big tourist demand. There is also a train service that carries people from the bottom up to the top. Again, that's it's a bit guilty, but it makes sense in some ways. Obviously, it allows certain people to get to the top of Snowdon that never otherwise would. It does provide a different option. But what it does do is it alludes to cheapen the experience. And what then happens is, as you get to the top of Snowdon, there is the summit, the highest point, the summit, is a beacon that's on a bit of a staircase, a rock staircase. And the queue to get up to that top was insane. The way that I walked up with a friend when we did it was relatively quiet. We probably saw, being generous here, we probably saw like 25 people the whole time we were going up that we passed. So you're not really expecting it. And then you get to the top and you see this queue. There's probably a good 100 people that were there queuing in front of us already. And you think, for one thing, where the hell have they all come from? How many of them have taken a train? Let's be fair. And of course, the queue takes bloody ages, not just because we're British. The queue takes ages because everyone wants to get a selfie. They don't just want one selfie, they want a selfie of themselves, then with partner number one, then partner number two, then the three of them together, then a different angle, then, oh, no, that one's rubbish. I need another one, please. And again, the whole thing, it leaves a really, really bitter taste in your mouth. And it completely sort of torpedoes, I suppose, the sanctity of the experience. And it's a bit like, you've purposely got away from the big city, gone all the way out to the middle of nowhere, North Wales, had an idyllic climb where your worries just float away, and then you're greeted back with the hordes at the top, at the point where you just to celebrate the achievement. Really, it's savage. It's cannibalistic. Vanity en masse is preying on and destroying these sacred elements and parts of the world that we hold so dear. The cafe itself, the two are sort of linked, aren't they? Because if you're ferrying people up there, there's an increased demand. The fact that the cafe even operates, you should have seen how many staff there were working there. I bet it makes a profit every day that it's open.
I bet. I mean, firstly, I just want to say in regards to the train, I do not think that's a good idea at all. Not everyone has like a right to go to the top of a mountain. Like you've got to earn that. I mean, some people will be like too old or whatever. Time's gone. You had your chance. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
if you can't get to the top, so be it. Like there's certain places in the world that I can't go because of physical limitations. I'm never going to go to the top of Everest. Do you know what I mean? And that's a financial limitation as well, right there, because it set you back about 60 grand. And I'm not expecting them to build a fucking train for me to go to the top, am I? I think that's horrific. I think mountains, again, similar to Stonehenge. I mean, mountains historically have always had a sacred quality to them. They've always been viewed as quite sacred, as being a place where you can usually get closer to the gods, get closer to if you go throughout pretty much all major religions to have some kind of sacred mountain. Christianity, you obviously have Mount Sinai, and it's the same in Judaism where Moses received the Ten Commandments. In Hinduism, you have Mount Kailash. I think that's where Shiva lived. And Everest is sacred to the Nepalese people. You're actually not meant to climb it. Like they don't, in their religion, I mean, A, you're not meant to climb it because humans aren't designed to
Yeah.
breathe at such altitudes. But B, the Nepalese people actually have historically viewed that mountain as sacred. There is a mountain in the Himalayas that's never been climbed, and it hopefully never will be climbed. I can't remember the name of it now, but because it's so sacred. I mean, I remember going to I had a similar experience in the Peak District. The Peak District being sort of sandwiched right between Sheffield, Manchester, Leeds means it gets a lot of like city folk going in. Oh, I've struggled to park first of all out in the middle of fucking nowhere. It should be fairly easy to park. No. And then, yeah, it's just like hordes of people. And a lot of them aren't even prepared. They're not even wearing the right gear. They're just there for like, again, probably because they've seen this on Instagram or something like that. And it's like, well, I've got to go there now. It's not even original, is it? It's just a kind of copycat thing. But yeah, no, I'm sorry you had to go through that. Are you okay?
I'm still just recollecting now and working out the different levels of trauma to it. This was back in July. Was it August that we did it? Maybe
And it still
July.
feels like yesterday, though, doesn't it?
I can still
Mm,
hear their screams now.
yeah.
The little trend as well that I did find quite annoying was the amount of people that had bought with them a token, like one of those mini wines, like a travel wine or a travel alcohol with them to drink at the top. And again, I kind of feel like if you've climbed it and it was really that difficult for you, absolutely have the drink. But if you've got the train up there to queue and then to crack this drink, and oh man, the thing is as well that you're not fooling anyone. You can tell someone that's walked up it will show signs of that. They could be sweaty, they could be muddy, the clothes they're wearing, their dishevelled demeanor. But the people that are coming up in pristine North Face jackets,
Mm.
yeah, I got your number.
Do you know what? I don't know. Have you ever heard of Gorpcore? Now, this is a particularly egregious social media trend. Gorpcore is kind of like combining fashion with sort of the outdoors, like hiking and camping and things like that. So it's like movement where you don yourself in like all this really expensive, like outdoorsy clothing, like Arc'teryx,
Okay, yeah,
North Face, Patagonia, and then you get like the Solomon like hiking trainers and just all this like, and it's almost like slightly military looking gear, but it's all sort of waterproof and that stuff. And then you go out to like the Peak District and then get all these and have kind of like a sort of do a hike, but kind of like turn it into a sort of photo shoot. You're almost turning like these national parks into like catwalks and like runways. It's really weird. I hate Gorpcore. It's a filthy perversion of what going out and into nature should be.
yeah, very true. I hadn't heard of the phrase, but I'm familiar with the concept of it. And it has become incredibly trendy, hasn't it, at the moment? Just kind of, as you say, outdoorsy wear as fashion and
Mm.
the ramifications that brings with it, and certainly the mindsets as well. I think there can be potentially fatal ramifications. People don't consider how dangerous hiking a mountain can be, how careful you have to be every single step, how strenuous something like that is, how many flapjacks you need to pack in the bag to get up that.
Preach it.
Preaching it, sister. Reeling it back, you mentioned also about Mount Everest, uh, and that's another scene of the crime, really. I know that we previously discussed this, but quite a horrific trend engulfing Everest is to do again with, as you say, far too many people having the means or the ability, rightly or wrongly, to get up the mountain and to say that they've done it purely on this sort of vanity measure, and get the selfies up at the top of Mount Everest. I mean, how godly is that? But it's actually causing damage and fracas to the mountain.
There's literally you can sort of see these images. They're quite incredible images of like people queuing to
Yeah,
get to the top of Everest, and like that's one place where you don't want to be stuck too long because you've got a limited oxygen supply. But it's even Everest is probably one of the worst examples as well because in order to get to the top, at least with like Snowdon, it's fairly easy to climb, and it's just kind of it's on you. Maybe if you have an accident, you'll call out the emergency services that didn't otherwise need to be done. But for like Everest, you have to employ all these like Sherpas
Yeah.
who are putting themselves at risk. And there was a climbing season a couple years back where a bunch of Sherpas actually died. I can't remember exactly what happened now. If there was like a little mini avalanche or something. I think something like that happened. A bit of the mountainside collapsed, and a significant number of Sherpas died, and they effectively went on strike for the rest of the climbing season. There's a documentary. I think it's just called Sherpa, but that's a really good documentary actually, and it even has like sort of clips of previous years and incidents between hikers and Sherpas and the sort of antics of these people who come to climb Everest, and they're again increasingly entitled and arrogant. And if I met someone who'd climbed Everest, I genuinely wouldn't be that impressed.
But that's the other aspect of it, is the more accessible that becomes, and just the same with Snowdon. The train cheapens your hike. Just the same, yeah, obviously with Everest. It used to be quite a revered thing, didn't it? Quite a pedestal to get to. But now it's more or less just a display of wealth. Bought your way up there, kind of. It reminds me of Led Zeppelin and buying a stairway to heaven. It's cheating divinity a little bit.
But I think there's not many corners of the world that are left untouched. I mean, when I lived on the Isle of Skye, I used to see lots of this kind of thing. I mean, there's a place called the Store, which is like these sort of crazy rock formations. It's really cool and stuff. But it's a bit of a hike to get up there. Like you need decent footwear. And I remember seeing one guy in flip flops,
Oh my god.
and I was just like, "What are you doing, man?" And there's multiple incidents, and actually the Scottish kind of mountain rescue had to put out a statement being like, you know, people have got to be more careful when they go out hiking because they're getting overwhelmed with people who aren't prepared,
Yeah.
who just see these things on Instagram and they think, oh, I'll go do that because I want to get my picture, and they go out without realizing the dangers involved, and then they have to call out the emergency services, who then may get then taken away from a genuine emergency. Vanity has real. It's not just a sort of moral kind of thing. It has real world implications for it's life or death. That's what it's become. And as a society, we are it's hanging in the balance.
Mm.
It's hanging in the balance.
We're riding right on the edge. So we urge you, if you were thinking of going out tomorrow and taking a selfie anywhere, don't do it, goddammit. Put your phone down the toilet. I
Uh,
think that's the only way. That's the only way.
Unfortunately, I will see it because now I'm living in London. Just a little update for the listeners there. I'm a London man now. God, some of the I mean, it's tourist city around here. Do you know what I mean? Like some of the
Absolutely.
antics I am seeing are just atrocious. I decided to go to the Natural History Museum on a Sunday, which was a terrible idea. And I was sat in the cafe at the V&A, which is like opposite there, and I witnessed some true like sort of influencer activity. There was someone actually doing like kind of like a catwalk. It was like these two guys, and like one had like the proper camera and stuff, and this other guy was like proper doing like the sort of that model walk where they kind of
Yeah.
like push their shoulders out a bit, and it was just like. Where the fuck do you think you are? You're literally outside like a shitty little museum cafe. This isn't Paris. This isn't Milan. You're not like on the actual catwalk. And then there was another group who had like, have you seen like this sort of? It's kind of like a little stick, and you have like a little bit to put your phone in, so you can kind of like hold it and do like
Oh,
more
yeah.
You can have a bit more control. And they were kind of filming all these shots of this girl walking around, looking around in like wonder. Oh, I'm in London. Oh my god. Oh, it's raining. Oh gosh, it's beautiful. And I was just sat there drinking my coffee. Again, just sort of like the shamelessness of it. The fact that it seems to be normalized now.
We discussed the Facebook eye theory multiple episodes ago because we're
Mm.
we're current and ahead of the curve and just giving you guys straight knowledge all the time. And this epidemic feeds right into that problem, really, with the amount of people that, you know, visit revered, sacred, spiritual places only to satiate the greed of their phone's camera shutter boiling down eons of human history, life, and experience into a single sleazy camera click. I'll tell you what else a realization that I stumbled upon thinking about this episode. I was thinking back also, another little anecdote to last year in May. Me and my father went to Paris and we thought we'd check out the Louvre while we were there. But obviously, all of the clamour, really, no room was anywhere near as busy as the one housing the original Mona Lisa. And you had to queue up to get into this room. Neither of us are that fussed about it as a painting, but we thought, we're here, so we might as well see it in person. And it's incredible how quickly people go from being well meaning, well mannered, respectful into just a herd of rats. There were young girls in there that were pushing my dad out of the way so they could get a selfie with Mona Lisa. And again, you think, what are you doing? You're getting a selfie with this famous piece of art. Again, I go back to that lyric and I just think, in what sense are you completing it? The picture is complete. That's the fucking point, but it's so hell bent on, again, that notion of, like, if you don't get a picture, then it didn't really even happen. You can't just accept that you saw the Mona Lisa or just spend that time engaging with it, breathing in it. How did it feel when you were there? What thoughts overcame you? How did it affect you in that way? All you have to answer for that is, boom, I got a selfie. So the realization I arrived at is that the problem with tourist attractions is that they attract tourists, which sounds simple when you say it, and that's because it is simple. But it is also bloody well true. Really, if I'm to be humble and modest, I'm just as guilty as anyone. Because you go there, you take up space. I might think I'm more respectable about how I act in these situations.
At the moment, there's a bit of a movement across Europe, a kind of anti-tourist movement. It's particularly because it's taken quite a big grip in Spain. Places like Barcelona. I don't know if you saw that residents were firing water pistols at tourists during the summer. Malaga, Tenerife recently did some protests. Basically, like, Spain's got quite a bad housing issue. They're actually kind of protesting a bit more against kind of the government and particularly Airbnb. Actually, again, basically over tourism in Spain is like choking local people. Local people can't buy houses or they can't find anywhere to rent because they've all been converted into Airbnbs to meet the tourist demand. Edinburgh is similar. Edinburgh's recently imposed a tourist tax. Vanity is feeding into this kind of surface level tourism where people just show up, take the picture, and then fuck off. They don't actually add anything to the local economy. They don't stay in a hotel long enough, or they don't really eat out or whatever, and they don't absorb themselves in the culture. They don't offer anything. There's no kind of, when you go on holiday, you want or travel or whatever, you want there to be a bit of a cultural exchange. Mostly if I go on holiday, I want to learn about the place I'm visiting and the people and the cuisine and the customs and things like that. But also maybe I've got something to give. I don't know if people want to have a little chat and I'll tell them about the UK and whatever. I'm happy for that. Express tourism. I think that's the word I want to go with here. And it just feeds into this vanity. It feeds into this idea now that holidays really for a lot of people, it's not about going somewhere to enjoy it and experience it. It's about just going there, getting your pictures, and then kind of boasting about it and feeding your own ego. There is a lot of merit to getting off the beaten track, to use a bit of a cliche. I bet there's so many mountains in Snowdonia that offer equally impressive views, but will be way quieter.
Well, yeah, I remember a few months before tackling Snowdon, me and my sister went up Kedai Idris, and that was
Mm.
incredible. That was just beautiful as a hike all day long, no complaints. You got to the top, there was a few people there, had a conversation with you. Wow. You sure a couple people got pictures and just more so pictures of the view or like of the top. You could breathe up there, and it was kind of what you'd expect from that experience, I suppose, naively.
One could argue the front camera is one of the worst inventions uh, brought upon man. And I was reading an interesting article that basically said how unnatural it is that we spend so much time looking at our own faces. It's actually unnatural as a species to be confronted with ourselves so regularly. I mean, if you go back to like Neanderthal times, like very rarely would have seen images of themselves. Maybe in like, would have mostly just been in like a pool or a lake. Whereas, with the inventions, initially it would have been, the mirror glass. And since then, it's just gone obviously with photographs and video, and now with just the 24-hour access to cameras and screens and mirrors that show ourselves. We have like this warped idea of ourselves, and it basically feeds into a lot of negative thoughts that people have about their image. Particularly like women who are more likely to have like body image issues when they're constantly looking at their own face. The more you look at yourself, the more you begin to focus on your imperfections and your flaws. And so the more you begin to resent your own face. And then of course we then see more faces than is natural, because on social media you can see all these beautiful faces, and the algorithms are designed, they favor selfies, they favor images of people. This vanity is also damaging in a psychological aspect, because we're not really meant to see our faces so much. We're not meant to fixate so much on our faces and how we look. And and then it gets even worse with things like filters, which can show you
Mm.
how you could look. I think filters, like Snapchat filters, Instagram filters, are an extremely damaging thing. Particularly those ones that kind of make you a bit slimmer, or they might make your skin look a bit more airbrushed, or whatever it is. And it's like, this is how you could look, but you don't. You then even feel worse about yourself. The levels of vanity now in society is extremely unnatural.
No, I agree. I think that's a strong argument and well made. Obviously, the root of the problem is Skynet as usual. What a bloody shock. Um, the filters, though, you're right. It implements a false standard, doesn't it? We compare ourselves to this ideal that is simply unattainable because it's not real. But the obsession then becomes less with not the well, yeah, the obsession grows into chasing this false standard. In that process, you get further and further away from, I don't know, the core being that you are, what your real interests are, the things that actually do motivate you or would fulfill you in life. And instead, just on this tireless crusade to try and live up to some ideal, or perhaps impress in other people's minds that you are pretty, just chasing this constant validation that's never really going to give you what you think it will. But it doesn't stop them trying.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I want to reference. Have you seen the Never Ending Story?
No.
It's kind of like a sort of cheesy kids fantasy movie from the 80s. But there's a scene where this character has to look into this mirror, and the mirror will basically show you your true self. And the warning he gets before is like, when confronted with their true self, most men will run in fear. And I think there's something about that, it's like quite an interesting idea. Another fantasy film reference, to reference the first Harry Potter film, The Mirror of Erised, where you look into the mirror and you see your deepest desires, don't you?
Mm.
So like Harry looks into the mirror and he sees his parents because he wants his parents back. And I think Dumbledore says something like, a truly content person will look into the mirror and only see themselves. And we can argue about the merits of J.K. Rowling's writing, because it's not the best, but I do think that's an interesting concept that she's picked up on there. Would be it, and then again, and that's what happens with Dorian Gray. To go back to the very start of this episode, the portrait is a reflection of his soul. How many people really could face being confronted with their true selves?
Not many.
That's
That's why we run away. That's why
Yeah.
pubs make a killing. That's why we're still hooked on drugs. That's why that's reason for a lot of stuff. It's a tough question.
I think it's a question that deserves to be answered in prose form, personally.
Well, I don't know if this will answer the question, but I did. Here's one that I made earlier that might just ease the woes a little bit and leave the listeners with some kind of joy to cling on to. Beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. A crass shame it is. Vanity en masse has distorted the senses and rendered what was once beautiful nothing but fodder for a carcass. At the whim of FOMO's distant whisper, they whittle up innovative methods to spite existence, igniting the decrepit pistons of ignorance, necessary to fuel the deftest ounce of your cognition. It's a small world when you reduce everything to a 6-inch LCD retina, filled up megabyte by megabyte with this sick disposition. The box must be ticked, nothing more, nothing less. Millions of mindless morsels stuck on a sordid quest they do not understand but still proceed to give what they perceive as their best. Sold on the glimmering templates television propagated, snatching at the very heart of purity with each monument they walk past and miss with vision, but chisel at with their vicious megapixels. Nothing is sacred to those who scale the snake pit, infesting what was once infallible radiance with the same stodgy grey mealworm decay they stamp with every sordid trample of their designer boots. And smaller yet the circumference of safety grows, as in the blaze, damnation, and surrendered eternity grows. There's some prose.
Beautiful. I think I thought it was interesting the point you made about them not people doing this but not really understanding it. This kind of like this is just what is accepted now in society. It's like this is just what we do. And there is a generation coming through that they witness this behavior in their parents, and it's normalized. And maybe and that's just something I just don't think I'll ever truly understand because, like I say, I have a bit of shame. I have a bit of self-respect, so I'm just not going to be walking around with a big old. I'm not going to be walking around Stonehenge with a big old selfie pole. Some people think that's perfectly acceptable.